South Africa's unemployment rate decreased by 1% from 33.9% in the second quarter to 32.9% in the third quarter of 2022. Now, the number of unemployed persons decreased by 269,000 to 7.7 million. And discouraged job seekers decreased by 54,000 to 3.5 million in the third quarter of 2022. Now, that's compared to the previous quarter. Manufacturing, trade, construction and transport industries recorded the largest job gains, while finance, private households, mining and agriculture recorded job losses. According to Statistics South Africa's unemployment results released yesterday, the total number of persons employed was 15.8 million. In the third quarter of 2022. Labour consultant Tony Healy joins us this morning. Tony, thank you. Thanks very much for your time and joining us this morning.
Yeah, good morning, Leanne.
So let's perhaps look into what was behind the decrease in the unemployment rate from the second quarter to the third quarter, where we're now sitting at 32.9%.
Well, Leanne, I think the first thing to notice is it's the third quarter of a decline, which is perhaps some good news. We see increasing in jobs increasing in manufacturing. We see jobs increasing in construction as well. And overall, the number that you mentioned, I think the real question is in the grand scheme of things, whether this is or isn't really particularly good news.
Yeah, perhaps you can go a little bit more into this. So tell us your views on it.
Well, I think yes, we must be encouraged that 3 quarters in a row now we've had a reduction in the unemployment rate. Especially in light of the fact that we have the Eskom outage issues, which you've just been discussing. And that, I guess that's got to be good news. But the reality is, unfortunately, we still have nearly 12 million unemployed. And that really still is a national crisis.
Yeah, I mean, you look at those numbers, and I suppose to put them into individual numbers, we heard and reported that the number of unemployed persons decreased by 269,000. I mean, that's over 250,000. So, I suppose putting those people into jobs is a positive thing.
It is a positive thing, and I think especially in light of the circumstances, the outages, for example. But if we look at it in context, for example, we're still below the number of employed persons below COVID 3 years ago. So fewer people are employed now than were employed 3 years ago. And if you look at our high unemployment rate north of 30%, we need to be growing at about 5 to 7% GDP in order to start making a dent into that unemployment number. And another thing that's important is that we need to grow. At least there are 300,000 new job applicants entering the job market every year. So that means that we need to create 300,000 new jobs every year just to maintain the current unemployment level, and add another 300,000 to that, if you like, say 600,000 a year, before we even begin to start denting that north of 30% unemployment number.
Yeah, I mean, if we, however, look at the expanded definition, and that's quite an important number as well, because if we look at that expanded definition, which basically includes people that are available for work but that are not looking anymore, they've just sort of said, well, I've given up. That's the end of that, and that number sits at 43.1% compared to 44.1% in June. I mean, that is very worrisome.
Absolutely right, Leanne, and that's the really important number. The 33% number is the official quoted number, but the number that's really important is that definition you've just described, the expanded definition, because that's the true number of unemployed people in the country. And as you rightly said, that's almost 12 million people. So yes, I guess we should be encouraged by the fact that we've grown 260,000 jobs in the last quarter, but that kind of pales when we're reminded of the fact that even with that, there are still almost 12 million unemployed.
If we look at where we rank in the world, and I do bring this up as a conversation because it is important to compare ourselves to a lot of people. At one point, we had the highest unemployment in the world, and that is not a record that we should be proud of. It's now only gone down to, I think, the third highest unemployment rate. What are we doing wrong? When we look at where we're at, and I mean, we look at particularly also on the African continent, I mean, we're faring absolutely dismally. What is the problem with creating jobs? There's promises all the time. We heard promises yesterday by the president again. There's going to be so many jobs created by using clean energy, and yet we never see them. What are we getting wrong?
And that's the tragedy, Leanne. That's the tragedy, because there are things that can be done to begin to address this in a much more significant way. It doesn't help to drop a couple of 100,000. I know it sounds like a lot of jobs, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. We're not moving in the right direction. What can we do? There are things we can do. I mean, to begin with, infrastructure investment programs that the president has been talking about. There's a lot of money there to be spent on infrastructure investment programs, but it's not being actioned. And I think that's the story of government. There are plans. There are programs, but nothing gets actioned. If that was to begin to flow, it would make a hugely significant impact on the number of employment opportunities. Reliability in terms of energy supply, you've also spoken about that this morning. That is crucially important. How do you invest in this country if there's no confidence in electricity supply? And one that doesn't get mentioned often, but I think plays a part to some degree at least, and that is we have a highly regulated labor law regime, and we could lighten that up a little bit. There's been comments that perhaps our labor laws were fit for purpose in 1995 when they were really recreated. Yes, there have been some amendments since then, but the costs of employment for employers and the inflexibility of the labor market, I think, discourages employment in its own right.
I want to turn our attention a little bit to what's happening in Cape Town at the moment with the Green Hydrogen Summit. And I will quote what the president said. He told delegates at the summit, South Africa is a favorable, reliable, and a stable place to conduct business. Now, I look at that, and the critic in me is shaking my head, saying, how do you say that when really, I mean, how do you conduct business when from one moment to the next you're on stage 1, then stage 4, then stage nothing, then all of a sudden up to stage 3, then stage 5, then I mean, this is the basics that we're not getting right. And you're trying to bring more investment into the country when we can't get our energy supply right. I mean, that is the basic that we should be getting right. I mean, an industry needs electricity to work in. Now, on top of this, we want to go clean energy, and I understand that, but when we look at the coal sector, this is still a massive employer here of people in South Africa. And if we suddenly switch that off and move in the green route, where we don't even produce our own solar panels, which we heard on the program yesterday. We do not produce the solar panels that we see on the roofs here in South Africa. We have to import everything. And yet the world is taking our coal. Help me understand this. What are we doing?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think coal-fired power stations are going to be with us for a while through necessity. We absolutely have to. And yes, we understand the pollutant aspect of that, but it's with us for some time. And the new technology, the hydrogen, et cetera, I mean, those are energies of the future. But again, those kinds of sectors, Leanne, you need the skills to be able to work in those areas. And part of the problem we have is that we're losing so many skilled people because of what you are describing, because of the outages, because of the corruption, because, to a large degree, because of the crime. So even if we evolve into new technology sectors that have the potential to grow employment, we struggle to find the skills to drive those kinds of initiatives.
And this is one of the big problems. I mean, we look at the issues, and I'll just quickly wrap this up because we are going into news. But you know, issues of where we're at, and you talk about the lack of skills, and this is something that we really have to worry about. We have to look at the education system and the kind of graduates that we're pushing out there. Because yes, you've got your matrics right now that are going and studying their writing matric and desperate to get into university, and then they get into the workforce and there are no opportunities. And this is where the problem comes in, because when you look at the youth, they bear the brunt of the fact that there just are no opportunities available for them. And this is a dangerous zone to be in.
Very much so. You know, I'm a parent of a matriculant this year, and looking at, as many other parents do at this stage of their lives, trying to look at what does the future hold. And I think we need to focus on, you know, there are jobs that exist today that actually didn't exist when these kids started going to school. That's how quickly the technology is evolving. So I think we need to right size or correct the kinds of skills that our children are being educated on, because there are so many new technology, digital sphere skills, for example, which are in high demand. And yet we don't have enough skilled, qualified people to occupy those positions.
All right, we'll leave it there for this morning. Thank you, Tony. Thank you very, very much for talking to us here on the programme. And we're talking unemployment figures and where we were at. Just improving 1% is what the figures say. That's Labour consultant Tony Healy discussing what that means for the country.